You know, when you think of Nepal, you probably picture breathtaking mountains, right? But there's another story unfolding there, a story of incredible vulnerability to climate change. And what's even more incredible is the vision they have to fight back. We're going to look at how Nepal is turning this massive challenge into a real strength, all powered by a green energy revolution that starts in its own communities.
Okay, to really get a handle on the stakes here, just look at this number, $345 million. I mean, that's the estimated economic hit from just one single extreme rainfall event. This isn't some far-off abstract problem. For Nepal, the cost of climate change is absolutely devastating, and it's happening right now. And this right here, this quote really gets to the heart of the injustice of the whole climate crisis. Nepal's own climate plan points it out. The country contributes a tiny, tiny fraction of global emissions, just 0.027%, and yet it's one of the places suffering the most. You have to keep that in mind because it makes what they're doing with their energy strategy, well, it makes it all the more incredible. So, faced with this huge challenge, what's the plan? How is Nepal responding? Well, it's not just about playing defense. It's about building a completely new, resilient future. And right at the very heart of this transformation is one key organization. Okay, let's introduce you to the AEPC. That stands for the Alternative Energy Promotion Center. This is the government agency basically leading the charge on the country's big push into renewables. A great way to think of them is like the central nervous system for Nepal's green transition, you know? They're coordinating everything from national policy all the way down to the projects happening on the ground.
Now, what's super interesting is how they do it. This isn't your typical top-down government program. No, the AEPC uses what's called a public-private partnership. So you've got the public sector setting the stage, making the right policies, providing tech support. Then the private sector jumps in to actually build, install, and service the tech. And the end result? The communities themselves benefit from decentralized, sustainable energy. It's just a really smart, collaborative way to get things done.
And believe me, the AEPC does way more than just put up solar panels. Their role is super strategic. They're helping small businesses actually use this new energy to grow and create jobs. They've got direct access to major international climate funds, which, trust me, is a huge deal. They're at the table helping craft national policy. And this is so important. They make sure that gender equality and social inclusion are baked into every single project. It's not an afterthought. All right, so that's the strategy, the big picture. But what does it actually look like for people on the ground? Let's dive into some real-world examples of how this is changing lives. Check this out. This is the Chuquena Mini Hydropower Project. It is the perfect example of community-owned power. I mean, it's tucked away in this super remote region, and this one plant now gives reliable electricity to over 6,000 households. And you know, this is about so much more than just flipping a switch and having the lights come on. It's about connecting entire communities to a world of new opportunities. And it's also a story about resilience. Just listen to this. In a place called Bajora, a devastating flash flood completely wiped out the local microhydro project. And just like that, 1,200 families were plunged back into darkness. So getting that power back on, it wasn't just some technical fix. It was about restoring hope and restoring people's ability to make a living.
And if you want to know the real human impact, just listen to the words of Krishna Pariyar, a local tailor. My work has increased by 80% since the electricity came back. My income has risen, and so has my savings. Wow, an 80% increase? More income, more savings. That's what we're talking about. That's what reliable energy does. It powers sewing machines, sure, but it also powers businesses. It powers economic freedom.
Okay, let's go even higher. And I mean way higher. We're talking 4,200 meters above sea level. This is Na Village, sitting right near the famous Choropa Glacial Lake. Can you imagine the logistical nightmare of trying to get power up here? It's a massive challenge. But they did it. The AEPC installed a solar mini-grid, basically bringing a lifeline to one of the highest settlements on the planet.
And the impact? It's been absolutely transformative. Yeah, it powers homes and streetlights, of course, but it's so much more. It means local families can run homestays for trekkers. That's a huge source of income. It means people don't have to leave their homes during the brutal winters anymore. This isn't just a small change. It's fundamentally reshaping the entire economy of the region.
So these projects are incredible, right? But what's really amazing is that Nepal isn't stopping there. They're already looking ahead to the next frontier. They're not just solving today's problems, they're planning for tomorrow's opportunities. And that brings us to something really exciting, the green hydrogen horizon. All right, so you've probably heard this term green hydrogen thrown around a lot. But what does it actually mean? What exactly makes it green?
Well, this little chart breaks it down perfectly. You've got gray hydrogen, that's the old dirty way, made from fossil fuels. Then there's blue hydrogen, which is a bit better because it captures some carbon, but it's still relying on fossil fuels. But green hydrogen, that's the real game changer. You make it by splitting water, H2O, using renewable electricity, like all that hydropower Nepal has. The entire process, totally emissions-free.
And this is exactly why Nepal is in such a perfect spot to do this. The country has this huge goal to generate a ton of hydropower by 2035. So what do you do with all that clean electricity, especially if you have extra? You can channel it directly into making green hydrogen. It could literally turn Nepal from just a water-rich nation into a clean fuel powerhouse.
And that green energy isn't just for hydrogen. It's going to power other sectors too. I mean, just look at their ambition for electric vehicles. They're aiming for 90%. 90 of all private cars sold to be electric by 2030. That's not some tiny little adjustment. That is a fundamental, massive shift away from fossil fuels. It just shows you how serious they are.
And look, this whole vision, it's not just some nice idea they're talking about. As you can see from this report cover, it's backed by some serious, in-depth strategic thinking. Research institutes are mapping out the exact steps needed to unlock this sustainable future. They're moving from a big ambition to a concrete, actionable plan.
But of course, turning a vision this bold into reality is never going to be easy. So let's be realistic and look at the hurdles that are standing in the way.
And the challenges are pretty significant. First up, they need to secure a lot more international funding. Then you have to actually build the infrastructure for these new technologies. That's a huge job. The laws and regulations have to catch up to the technology. And maybe the biggest one, they have to figure out how to take those successful small projects we saw and scale them up for the whole country. And that means getting the private sector to do more than just be contractors. They need to be real investors.
You know, through this whole journey, one lesson keeps popping up from Nepal's experience, especially with those community-owned projects. It's this idea that small is still beautiful. And they have proven that over and over again. These decentralized, local projects have been unbelievably effective.
So, it all comes down to this. Nepal has absolutely proven that small is beautiful. They've mastered the art of small-scale, high-impact renewable energy. The big question now, the one that's going to define their future, is can they prove that small can scale? Can they take that beautiful, successful model and grow it big enough to power an entire nation's green dream?